sit here. All right. Let's move on. What we're going to do now is let's come in here into Chat 2 project again. Let's create a new Java class. Okay. And let's call this math demo. And we're going to come in here, I'm going to put in a method. There we go. Now, what we want to do here is we want to write a program that is going to, first of all, generate two random integers that fall within a certain range. And we'll say to start with, it'll fall in the range of 0 to 10. And then once it has generated those two random numbers, it will then pop up a dialog box and say, what is this first number plus this second number? And then a person can type in what they think is the answer. And then the program will check and see if their answer is correct. And depending on whether they answered it correct or not, it will pop up an appropriate dialog box to say that, okay? Or actually, it'll just pop up a dialog box to show what the correct answer is. So let's see how we can kind of do some of this stuff, okay? What we're going to do in here is we're going to come in and let's first of all create an integer that we'll call num1, and then we'll create another one called num2. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to set the value of num1 equal to, okay? And there's a neat little thing in Java that we can do. We're going to type in the word math with a capital M, and then a dot. And then if you just start typing the letters RA, you'll see random will suddenly pop up on your screen. Random. And you just want to press enter there, and that'll accept that. And then do a semicolon. Now, we got a problem here because you can see we get this red wavy line here. Okay. Now, what's going on here? Well, let's take a look at this. This comes in and it tells us the following: incompatible types, possible lossy conversion from double to int. Okay. And here's what's going on here. Num1 is an integer, right? Does everybody follow me? This math.random, what it does is it generates a random number that falls somewhere in the range of 0 to less than 1. It will never be 1. It'll just be some randomly generated number that falls in the range of 0 to something less than 1, which means it's what? It's a decimal number. Okay? So this math.random will never return to us a full integer. It'll always return some kind of random number. So this is going to return to us a floating point number, and we're trying to shove that into an integer. We can't do that. All right? Now, just to see that this is really what's happening, let's go ahead and comment this line out. We'll finish it off in just a minute. Let's instead come down here and do a sysout statement. And we'll just say random number. Next, we'll come in here, and we'll do that again, math.random. We'll do that inside the print statement. And now just run your program. And you'll see it'll come up with some random number. Now, your number is going to be different than mine because it's a random number. And if you run your program again and again and again and again and again, you'll see that it's always coming up with some random number that falls in the range of 0, but always less than 1. Does everybody see that? Okay. Now, with that then, what I need to do is I need to tell the computer, hey, I really do want to take what this generates and shove it into this little place, okay, into this integer thing. Now, let me ask you this. Let's just see it in action, actually. Let's just come in here, and let's create a double variable, okay? and we'll call it float num. Okay. That gets assigned the number 34. Now, is 34 a floating point number? No, it's an integer, right? But we don't get an error here. We're trying to put an integer into a double, which is a floating point number. Why do we not get an error here?
Because of the random number that's between 1 and 0.
No. This doesn't have anything to do with random numbers. This is just that we're taking the integer 34 and we're putting it into a variable that is of data type double, which should hold just floating point numbers.
I mean, technically it does have a decimal, you just don't put it in.
No.
I mean, it's understood to be at the end.
Yeah, and what is it?
0 is 0.
It's always going to be 0, isn't it? I mean, if you take any integer, can you turn it into a floating point number? And does it ever change the value of it? No, you just say 0.0, and now it's a floating point number. So you can take any integer and convert it automatically into a double. Does that make sense? Because you're not changing the value of it. Now, let's follow this. If I have the number 25.65, and I want to convert that into an integer, we all know that, well, what you would do, let's make this even easier, let's just say 26.63. We would say, okay, well, we'll just round this. And we would all agree that we should probably round that up, and we would end up with 26, right? Well, the computer, in this particular case, you can't do that. One of the things you can do is you can cut that part off. But notice the value you get here is 25, not 26. So the computer doesn't know which do you want to do and which rounding method do you want to work with. And just for those of you who don't know, there are a lot of different ways of rounding numbers, all sorts of different financial ways of doing it, and whether you're doing scientific notation and all sorts of stuff. So there's no way to come up with one way to round a number up. So the computer says, look, if you take a floating number and try to put it into an integer, I can't do that automatically. But an integer being turned into a floating point number is no problem because you just add 0.0 on the end of it. So this doesn't cause any problem. Now, that is, let's clear up this. Let's take away the comments. We've got a problem here. The question is, can we tell the computer, I want you to do this? And the answer to that is yes. It's doing something that is referred to as casting. Okay? Casting. And what casting is where you take one data type, in this case, a floating point number, and you tell the computer, force it into an integer. Now you have to understand, if you do this on a floating point number to an integer, and you cast it, what you're going to get is this right here. It literally just cuts off the decimal point, and it does no rounding. It just says, fine, you want me to turn that floating point into an integer? I will. I'm going to cut off that, and we're going to move forward. And so that's what we're going to get. So in this particular case, we're going to come along, and we're going to cast. And how do you cast? Well, inside parentheses, you say, I want to take this and convert it into this data type. And so in parentheses, you just say, what data type? So that works great. Now let's come down here and change our print statement. So instead we'll say num1 is, and then we'll print out the value of num1 so that we can see that value there. Okay? So, just one second. So now let's go ahead and run this. And run it several times. And what value do you get? Every single time you're going to get 0, right? Is everybody getting 0?
I need something greater than 0 but less than 1.
You're getting something greater than 0 but less than 1? Okay. Well, I'll come back there and take a look at it just a second.
He didn't change the thing that
Oh, okay.
math random inside
Okay.
the system.
Esther, can you tell me why we're getting 0 here every time?
Probably because it's taking the random numbers and just chopping off the decimal.
Right. And the random thing generates a number that falls in the range of 0 to less than 1, right? And if you cut off the decimal, what are you left with? 0. That's all you're left with, okay?
So, is from 0 to less than 1, so it could be 0?
Yeah, but that's still, we're gonna end up with 0. But the other things that can generate are numbers like this, 0.6382463. It could generate that. So now we're gonna cut off the decimal point of that. So what are we left with?
0.
So every single time right now, the way we have it set up is gonna be 0. Abby, did you get it to work?
What's your question?
Okay.
For casting, how did you do it again?
All you do is you come in and inside parentheses, you say, what do you want that thing on the right to be converted into? In this case, we just say int. Okay? Which is what we're doing right here. Okay? Now, at this particular time then, what we need to do is we need to do something so that we don't end up with 0. So what if we were to multiply this number by something and first of all shift the decimal place? Right? What if we shift the decimal place so that we end up with 6.3824 and then say cut that off, we'll end up with 6. All right? So what would we have to do to get that to happen? Okay? So let's do that. Let's come up here and let's just multiply the result of this by 10. There we go. That should work. That should not working. Okay? Why did it not work? Order of precedence. We all learned that in algebra, right? Order of precedence. And what is the first order of precedence?
Multiplication and division.
Okay? Even before that.
Within the parentheses.
If there's no parentheses, go left to right. Correct? And so that's exactly what's happening. There's really no parentheses except around this call to this method. And so what's happening is we're first of all coming up with a random number and casting it and then multiplying that result by 10. What is math.random casted to an int always giving us?
0.
And what happens when you take 0 and multiply it by 10?
You get 0.
Right. But if we do want to do something first, we put it inside parentheses. So what if we tell it, do the random generation, multiply that by 10, take that result, and cast it to an int. All right? So now if you start running this, you will see that you end up getting all sorts of different random numbers that fall in the range of 0 and what? No. 9. Okay? If I want to get 0 to 10, what would I do? Okay? Multiply by, no. If I do 100, I've just expanded my range to what? 2-digit numbers, right? Because I shifted the decimal place all the way over. If I just want to go up by 1 digit, then I can just say multiply this by 11. Okay? And now I'll periodically, you never know when you're going to get it, but I could get a possible 10 in there. I'm not getting it, but you could possibly get it. But we'll leave it at 10 right now. Okay? So right now I'm getting a range of numbers that fall in the range of 0 to 10. What if I wanted to start this and I really wanted a range of numbers that fell in between, let's say, 3 and up?
Subtract 3.
Now I want the lowest number to be down at 3. So instead of 0, I want the lowest number to be at 3.
Add 3.
Yeah, just add 3. So if I come in here and just add 3, okay, notice you'll no longer get a 0, a 1, or a 2, but I'll get everything, including 11 and 12 as possible numbers. Is everybody seeing that? Okay. So in this particular formula then, we can come in here and by shifting this value and shifting this value, we can adjust the range of random numbers that we ever want. All right? So that's how you can do random numbers. Now, how is the computer actually doing this? It has a very complicated formula that's using a combination of several things that are true for your particular machine. such as the clock that's running on your machine, what time millisecond-wise it thinks it is, combined with the processor that's on your computer, combined with some information about the RAM in your computer, and it uses some just randomness that's going to be there, and some other things that are mixed in with the formula to come up with these random numbers. So, are they truly random? You can sit around and debate that all you want to. I'm not going to. All right, so let's move on. What we want to do, though, is we just want to get a random number between 0 and 9. That's going to do it. Next, we want to come in and we want to create another randomly generated number. And we want to do exactly the same thing. So, we could copy and paste if we wanted to, or we could just come in here and retype this. And so now we've got two randomly generated numbers. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. At this point in our program, and we don't have to do it at this point in the program, but at some point in our program, we have to figure out, our program needs to know the correct answer. And the correct answer is, what are those two numbers added together? And I'm going to store that somewhere. So I'm going to create another variable. I'll call it total. And I'll just say num1 plus num2. Now what I want to do is I want to get from the user, I want to get what they think the answer should be. And so we're going to do this program in two different ways. We're going to do it both with dialog boxes and without dialog boxes. So the first time we'll do it without dialog boxes. We'll just do it at what's called the command window, so we can kind of see how that works. In the command window, we use this thing that we learned on Wednesday called this scanner thing. And so we've got to put this scanner thing in our program. So we're going to come in here, and I'm just going to start typing the word scanner. And I didn't get quite done, and I can't remember what's supposed to be upper and lower case. This is where I do my control space bar. And I can see scanner appears there. And I want the one Java util. And so I select that one, and a couple things happen there. One, it puts in this scanner thing, and it also, at the beginning of my program, put in the appropriate import statement by doing the control spacebar. If you just typed in the word scanner, then this line did not appear there, and here's how you can fix that. If you'll notice, I now have a little light bulb here. If I click on that light bulb, I can choose Add Import Statement, and it will add that import statement up above. Okay? Should have. Oh, I just didn't scroll up. There it is. Okay? So now we've got that. So now we're going to call this something. We'll call it input equals new scanner. And then inside parentheses, we're going to put system.in. Again, I'm not even going to get into what all that means. We'll talk about that sometime in April. Just know that that's what you've got to do. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do an S out statement. We're going to print something on the screen. And what we want to do is we want to say, what is, and now we've got to print on the screen the first variable. So we're going to concatenate that with variable 1 and concatenate that with the actual plus sign. We want the actual physical plus sign to print. Then we want to concatenate that with the second variable. What is whatever's in num1 plus whatever's in num2. And then we can make it look really fancy by putting inside quotation marks a question mark.